This is day 60 of the Arukh HaShulchan OC cycle. If you would like to sponsor an upcoming shir of the Arukh HaShulchan OC, shir or more, please contact me directly, and we will arrange it with great gratitude. We are today going to finish Siman Lamed Beis, Mi'at Hashem. We're starting with from Siv Pei Zayin and Siman Lamed Beis, and we are supposed to go till Siman Lamed Gimel Siv Beis. So, in continuation with our explanation of tefillin in practice, here is the cheapo tefillin I got, and I took it apart and took the charitzim apart. And here, as you see, originally the four were together, and then I took them apart. So between each one, there's a complete separation. There's a complete separation between each one, but this is just a very narrow strip, actually, of leather on top, which comes off. So the real separation is underneath, and there's parchment here, or some very thin hide between each compartment, and but it's a charitz which goes all the way down to the bottom. Okay, that explains pay design. If you can't tell that there are separate compartments, it's possible. Or you have to put within each and every indentation on top of the leather a string or a small rope to distinguish between each chamber. There is a simple minhag to take one of the sewing threads from each and every chritz of the three of them and put them in between. As you can see, this is no longer here. There's no longer any thread between the two chitzim. Doesn't exist, right? Because Arukh HaShulchan says the chol tefillin osin came mishas your son. You put the rope there when you make it, and then you take it away. It's like a mold. So it's really, I think, when it goes on top here. In other words, these separate when you're molding everything together, and you want it to look like one, but still be separate on top, you would put a little thread there in order to make sure that you keep that indentation in the leather intact. And this is and after you finish the work, no they take it away. Just like the wooden mold upon which you make the film, which you move afterwards. So it's like we wrote above and see ayin samach tes. Where there used to be a mold in which they used to pour the concrete. So to this according to this, the gap or the space which we talked about in the Bryce there, it's an entire film. It's not like the Mepharshim will say that it's all out of one cloth, and then I guess you have to make one cloth continuous between bias and bias. I don't think it's one cloth continuous. I can't really tell, but it doesn't seem to me like it is. And that there's just a rope between the two of them, but rather that it can be separate clothing. And Mr. Bura says if you write all the four, I don't know when this comes up here, but if you write all the four parshias, and four kides, you have to put anything between each bias. Okay, and some poskim hold that you have to put the distinction between each bias no matter what, and that's the custom. Nevertheless, but the evidence not akiv. So I guess what they're saying, according to Rambam, is they don't even need all this cloth in the middle. This cloth over here and that cloth over there. As long as the parachutes are separate on the inside, it doesn't matter what you have on the outside. That's what seems to be with Mr. Brewer's perspective. Arukh HaShulchan goes on, according to Rambam, this is what it means. Just that which you just said, name Mr. Brewer. I'm not sure why he brings out Mr. Brewer earlier. The Lotema should sichtob arbaros. Dafka, you don't have to specifically write in four different separate pieces of cloth. I feel custom cloth. Echad, you want one cloth. Charkach chaschon legamre parsha. Okay, it's not all what the Mr. Brewer had said. It means that you wrote them one parsha, then you cut them one from the other. Yotza. Came with Shebesach no Sasam Batim because since you put them in the Batim of the Koach Bifnei Atzmo. Each one is by itself. Again, ain't kind of Chiddush Cloud. There's no Chiddush in the Rambam. If we're learning more in depth, so we look at the Rambam and see what the other possible pshatim in the Rambam would be. Peches. Kosu atu v'rishon asin mem chesim tzipa batim bezav or ba'orbei matmei psulim. If you coated the bias with gold or with the hide of an non-kosher animal, it's pasul. Hakal l'shono. It's a bryce of sanejim and chesam base. It's a bryce of sanejim, farshim tzipa and zav to cover them with gold. Hainu ala batim. That's concerning the batim on the batim, on top. Lo shas batim or behema ayin shitmei ayin shabbos. So they made the batim from the hide of a non-kosher animal. Medagam zav perish okay. The gold also about is on top of the batim, not the batim themselves. Varaya shall zav perish Rashi atam the tiksha or bainan. The evidence of that is from what Rashi says there, that you need to have a teak, an enclosure of leather. Rashi Zahav Pirish Rashi Atam the teak shel orbayin. Shema yid gam zahav pirish osim batim yizahav lo shikva batim zahav. I skipped a line. That's right. Avarashi b'menachas pei beis menachas v'rashi menachas pei al shitola ortem etzmeya, that you put on a patch of non-kosher animal shasa batim me'ar etzmeya, that you made the bat themselves from the leather of a non-kosher animal. And that would lead to that same conclusion by gold. For Raya shal zaha, and proof of this is shal zaha peirush Rashi atam the teak shel orbayin. It says you need to have an enclosure of leather. Ayin sham. Harei the gam esab pirish oseh batim izav. It said you make the batim of gold v'lo shechiva batim izav, and not that you cover them with gold. It's the gold by themselves are gold. For it's Arukh HaShulchan OC said no Yehuda evidently mentions this. Come nevertheless nearly the pshitla to Shulchan the shnei dvarim nichlu b'kavanah sebraisa. To Shulchan about the two aspects of the intent of the brisa. Hechal b'asiyas the batim atzam izav u'mitmeya. The first is not to make the batim themselves from gold or for a behemoth tmeya. Vashenius, and the second one, shechifa batim members tmeya, not to panel them on top with gold or a behemoth tmeya. For as Rashi begin, evidence this can be brought from Rashi begin memei. Shekasa shasa chipu kishelohem. You made the covering their pocket. V'chatamu. There's the same reason. Because shetipa batim zav tmeya. They put on top of the batim gold or a behemoth tmeya, and these batal tachton. It nullifies what's underneath. Because you can't see the bottom at all. Also that the outer batim, the outer chambers, do not see the airspace, which they're supposed to do. The Bir Halacha writes, if you cover the kosher leather with kosher leather, if the shin can be seen, it's kosher. And there's no psul in that which the bias does not see the air, unlike what the Arukh HaShulchan is saying here. But we said before already, I'm not sure why we don't bring this down here, that if you have a shel rosh, you want to make a shel yad, then you cover it with leather on top and it becomes one bias. So it's only be possible to be a shel rosh at that point because it becomes a shel yad. Vote, and also the Gam Gabi Tuma had Tzipuim Abato at Smakeli. He says Arukh HaShulchan that also in terms of Tuma, the halacha is that a coating cancels the kli itself. Like Rambam writes, and there's a sugya at the end of Chagiga with the Shulchan Klei Eitzim Nosei Nachas. He says in a bracket, that's when you connect them on the batim. But tiking. Those little the covers which we make for the batim. In the old film, they look like this. Anybody remember when they look like this? Cardboard, piece of cardboard. A live klumu, it's not a problem at all. Even these were on the bias at the time, not the ones we have where they cover them from top and bottom, but these old ones. Even they were the ones on the batim. When you put them on, it doesn't negate the film. That's okay. It's not appropriate to do this. Arukh HaShulchan is not pleased with our custom that we don't take off the tik shel yad tefillin based on tefillah, and we don't take off the that plastic covering. Could be that maybe it's a limud zchus that's an inside plastic covering, and that that's why it has that hole at top. You know, that hole which you can see the tefillin shel yad. So it could be that there's some limud zchus because of the hole, but otherwise it's not going. And I assume that's why we do it. But otherwise, he's not so happy about that plastic either. Okay, pay test. Allah must be seen. Shoes with tefillin need parim begina beim of chayatorim. Allah must be seen as that tefillin have to be sewn with the sinews of a kosher animal. Avaloi part begin off, and not with those made from sinews of chickens of fowl. Sheikholosh because they're weak. Gam enika ben gina leboslos. You can't tell the difference in them between the sinews and the flesh. The totally for begin sure best to use ox gut. Did you know this? I did not know this. They take these gidim from the heel of an animal, where they are white. They crush them, and if they are hard, they rack you soften them with stones. Until they become soft like linen. And then you spin them. It shows you some combine the strands. And they are very strong. You don't take the sinews from a non-Jew because we're afraid it comes from behemoth male. Mr. Burman examines some of that claim say you should not take from a non-Jew, and if you don't have any other gidim, you should make a bracha on those tefillin. Because I've been a Steve Gimel, the makam she'en gidim mitzuyim. If you don't have gidim, those sinews are readily available. Tofin be talidrus, shows me a cloth, some sort of strip of parchment. Archie's definitely gidim until they can get the gidim. Ad kan l'shona. But ain't them over, I don't understand. Came that locha Moshe says Arukh HaShulchan. Came that locha and them only for beginning. If that locha would say you must sew them with the sinews, not the cloth. How can we use cloth? It's a question not even you evidently asked. The tzarich lamar this relay that locha nemra kach. So you have to say that this is the way the locha Moshe was given. That even the sewings have to be from behemoth Torah. So therefore the derech became to use the sinews, which are the most like sewing material. But that it do specifically sinews, it's not an impediment. It's a difficult time, you can't get the sinews. Use strips of parchment. Before we name him Dakimi Veishim, and to use actual gut, like I said before, which are thin and dry. Yesh osrim. Some say it's also the ain't gidim. That's not called gidim. The yesh lachmir the line emra aloch gidim dafka. So you should be machmir to use specifically the sinews, which we call in English nerves. And this is what the Baiskim say. In the brackets here it says, Magen Avraham says you shouldn't bring close gidim ikuti. I feel should do shouldn't bring by the sinews from a goy, even if it's not a name of Torah. Mishum came to this halacha, mishum sina tzarich lasiyasim b'shma. And it's halacha must be said. Then making them has to be made. They have to be made lishma as well. Shikuti like lishma, and by non-Jew we don't have lishma. The Mishnah Berurah says it's only if you go to the non-Jew's home to buy the sinew, and it's especially because it's known that some of the non-Jews take the sinews from behemoth's tomatoes, because then it's kavua. Since you're going to their house, it's a suffix and kamechza mechzadami. But if the guy brings it to the marketplace to sell, you can buy from him, because since it came away from the kavua, it's no longer the makam akiyus, unless it's kol parsh miruv parsh, and I guess even the non-Jews had rov sinews, which are kosher animals. Unless it goes into a store, then it goes back to its kaviyus. And also, if you don't, also it's not known that some people take the sinews from non-kosher animals. It's permitted to buy from them no matter what, because most, in other words, there's no mokam suffix, the definite suffix, there's no definite mute. Most gidim come from behemoth's toros. And we already wrote, he says that the Elio Rabbah and the Pri Megadim are not sure if you need spinning lishma altogether. So Mishnah Berurah seems to be somewhat more lenient on this point. Tzadik, you should do 3 sewings on each side. Well, this one you can't really see anymore because I took it apart. One which is not so taken apart. Here you can see that there are 4 holes on each side, which means that there are 3 what's what I call it? 3 sewings between 4 holes, right? Okay, should be on top and below. Top, below. But they should be by the bias, low by ma'avarta. By the bias over here, not below by the ma'avarta, which is over here. And you should put the in the Rosh, we're talking about the tefillah between each and every bias. We put this back in. Maybe we can see. Maybe I have a better one. See somewhere. It's intact. So it's not really between each and every bias. I'm not sure what to say, but somehow it's between. I don't know exactly. Between the chambers somehow. Anyway, you have 3 on each side, which makes 12 altogether. And if so, but that's, I guess, just symbolic because you made 10 or less, it's still not possible. Somebody would say they have to all be with 1 string. And it should not be different sinews which are combined together. And if you sever them, they're possible. But you can then tie them back together again. Is a short string, so you can't complete all of the sewings with it. You can write here, you can use another string. And when if you know for an advance it's not going to be long enough, you should tie them to begin with, one to each other, and we should not deviate from this practice. The Mishnah writes that if the chut gets severed, some say you can tie them together, and some say you have to remove it all together and use a new string. The Magana says that if he doesn't have any other sinew, you can rely on the first svara and use the first string, which was severed. And this is only if it gets severed in the middle of the sewing. If it gets severed after the sewing, then it might not be a problem, I guess. He doesn't say exactly what happens. Okay, Tzadik Aleph. You put the ritzua into the ma'avarta, meaning you put the strap into its channel. The kesh can be dab sharosh, and you make a kesher which looks like a dalid. This is the contemporary of doing it. It looks like more like a dalid than the kesher dal kafel. Then at the you can yud b'shal yad and make like yud and shal yad lashlim osio shakai shin dal yud im hashin shim shalosh with the shalosh chem b'shabbos the shin b'dal v'yud shal tefillin halacha Moshe Sinai. So Moshe Sinai to have a shaddai in the tefillin. L'chein you asos Hashem hazeh keseder. So first, so you do an order mitchil hashin, which is made in the bias itself. L'char chadalid, which is made in the shal rosh. L'char yud and shal yad v'im shino lo yikei. If you didn't do that order, it's not a problem, not an impediment with the Yevet. But the Chatchila, it's preferable to be careful in this respect. The Mishnah writes that also the same idea. It's only the Chatchila, and if you had to change the show, Rosh is Dalet, you don't have to remove loosen the show, the Yud of the Shayat before you make changes in the Dalet of the Rosh. In brackets, Arukh HaShulchan says, "Hey, mashkazim Avraham asos adal mishnei tzdarim lo nagu kain." Like the dal 2 sides, that was the old kesher dal kafel. I don't know if I have any tune here, which have a dal kafel, but it's not the custom anymore to do it that way. Actually, let me see. This one's not right. This one is. Oh, I do have the kesher dal kafel. Here's the dal kafel. That's the old dalid kafel. See, it doesn't really look like a dalid. It has, it's like 4 squares. Hope you can see that. Okay, so that was the old way of making the dollar. Okay, that's not the custom. Mr. Boer brings his opinion. He says that, but the way he puts it is the new dollar, so to speak, is the one which is more appropriate to the dinar. And the Ramah writes that there's a custom to take the ore, take the ore of the leather of the bias of shalyad and put it the width of the arm, and its width should be the width of the bias. That was the says I don't know, but those are what he's talking about. The Eno move on cloud kavanasa bezeh. B'tur yesh gakin came to the Torah says something similar. B'sham bi'er la'avir ritzua al bayis shel yad. You put the strap on the bayis shel yad. Klomar al ma'avarta. Put on top of the ma'avarta b'shas akshira k'dei choska in order when you tie in order to strengthen it. K'mosha Sfaradim osim. Like the Sfaradim do. Chenikos shizel kavonas Ramah, and that is the intent of Ramah. Ach l'shono tamua ma'u zeh shamar yerach bo. But it's astonishing what he said. It's with. Laish Kantos. So Tlus perhaps is a mistake here among the Sfaradim in ways which I do not know offhand. They somehow put also another the leather on top, not just inside the Ma'avarta, but on top of the Ma'avarta as well. The Mishnah Berurah says, and according to the Ramah means, the reason that the tefillin shalyad, since you put the tefillin shalyad on the garments and they get wobbly and they get ruined as well, therefore they put the ritzua upon them in order to strengthen them. It sounds like it goes on top of the bias itself in order to hold in place, and that this no longer is the minhag. Siman Lamed Gimel. Finish Lamed base. What happens in the Skalkulu Abatim Aratzuos? He didn't Aratzuos. Amir Alf, from Ian Menachos, in the Skalkulu Abatim, Shnei Batim Bate Rosh. It says the two batim of the Shorosh got ruined, but batim him was zayd, so the batim are next to each other. Or a batim nikru ktsas ben bias, the letter has been ripped a little bit between by each bias. But the sides and the top are intact. Because all their puzzle. Because it's a sign that they got too old and brittle and they are no good. In Chadoshim, if they're still new, they're still kosher as long as the base is intact. And the bases of the house, the chambers are intact. They're just that they're torn a little bit. It also writes that the balcony have to be shleim on all sides, and we only amachshir that which is ripped internally between bias and bias. And this is also the opinion of the Ramah, which brings down halacha. And the bottom have to be intact. Only if they're a little bit ripped, it'll be okay. But that's again between bias and bias. But the sides have to be intact. And even if it's ripped in one bias, if it's also outside ripped, even if it's ripped outside, you still have to be machmir. Arukh HaShulchan seems much more lenient than this, because he must allow it to be ripped on the outside as well. Back to Arukh HaShulchan. So gives us a Rambam, Gemara Sham. Gives us Rashi Aval Hefech. That's going to Rambam. The Rashi says the opposite. The Chadashim, soon if they're new, they're puzzled. You shut him ksherim. If they're old, they're kosher. Time Chadashim Adayin Refuim B'Rakim. The new ones are still weak and soft. Kalkal, and they get ruined very easily. Of all the Chadashim, and also if they're new, it seems that indicates that the leather is defective. Cambridge was man on these because it got ruined in such a short time. Machinikin the Shem is supposed to old ones, Kranis Chazku, they're already strong. Voraya Tomit Klas, we know that the leather was good to begin with. The Mishnah Berurah says even when these things are not relevant, such as where the rip was done by a knife, not by some lack of integrity in the leather, one should be machmir. Says Arukh HaShulchan, at the kol echad l'shitas last shopper. Everybody's going to their own sheet and it works out. Rash to Orkai, Kmosh Kosavnu. Rash says going on leather. Therefore, by L'chei Chadashim creates new leather is worse. The Zosima Shalom Rukev is a sign that the leather is rotten. A Ram Sharash that Gidim Kai, Kmosh Yisba'er. Going the Rambam, it's really going on the sinews, like we're going to explain. Body is trying to create faith, so that old ones are no good. Shemachmas Yoshlan Yekabu, they got rotten because of their old age. The new ones, Ruben Chazokim Hank. I know the Bachush new sinews are strong as we can see. Base. I'm saying about him. Einam Zaytzel Zeh. The two batim are not each next to each other. Come on, Risham Shlish, but rather like the first and third. Avlim is Shonik shares them. They're all their kosher. Shittas Rashi and Chadashim kosher. According to Rashi, they knew their kosher. He's got Shlosha by them. Three got one. B'cholim Psulim. No matter at the bustle. I feel b'chadash even it's new tefillin. Shittas Rashi after the Shonim because the Rashi even in old tefillin. But now you should know the zeshin is by that which is explained. B'sifra Kodem the zaytz of zeb psulim that if they're next to each other it's possible. Ein nafkina min hashkikul tzad echad. That doesn't make difference if the kilkel is on one side, that in a manner that the kilkel is the not on one side and the other, and I guess the other one the other side in a manner that it's not they're not opposite each other. Whether it's on one is on one side, the one's on one side of the chamber A and the other side of chamber B. Doesn't matter. No matter what, this kilkul makes it possible.